So, hello everybody. Welcome to conversation number 2 of ARC Talk Tank with Sara Kolata. Today I have with me Maria. Maria is an incredible person that I met through LinkedIn. In fact, Maria Mustapha. Am I pronouncing your
Yeah,
name right?
correct. Yeah.
Is it a Greek name actually? Or
It's Muslim. No, it's a Muslim name.
Muslim?
The first name's
Interesting, because it sounds kind of Greek.
yeah, I can imagine. The first name is kind of Greek, Spanish, Italian, yeah, Irish.
Amazing. So, very excited to have you, Maria, on the talk today. I will let you introduce yourself. I think that you do it best. So,
Yeah, that's fine. So I'm Maria, and I'm a business strategist and troubleshooter, and I tend to work with architects and other building designers. And normally, when we got normal life, it is I help them grow their business and work more efficiently by helping them create better processes and systems for their business. And but in this period of time, I suppose I help businesses troubleshoot some of the issues that they're going through and how they can diversify what they do, their services, and so that it's not so much worry and confusion, and they're not at such a loss of what to do next. So yeah, that's what I do.
excellent. Thank you very much. Well, it's really a pleasure to host this conversation with you. So, we decided that the subject of the conversation is going to be adaptability to change,
Mm,
specifically for architects and people in the construction industry.
mm,
And I know that you have been working with online with quite a few practices. In
mm,
fact, now even more so helping them to pivot around the change.
mm.
So I'm just curious about your experiences and what have you felt has drastically changed now with the corona, especially with the sector of architecture and construction, and what are the main issues that you feel people are facing?
I mean, I have to admit, before the corona, what I always, for me, whenever I spoke to architectural firms and other people in construction, they were always reluctant to move their business online anyway. I've always said to them whenever I've worked in their business that you should always set up your business to work remotely, even if you never do, just because circumstances may change. I didn't think it would be this dramatic. What I meant was, your member of staff might break their leg and they're still able to work, but they might not be able to travel into work. And so those are the types of things I was thinking of. So I think it has been a bit of a culture shock that they are now having to move to remote working, and they're trying to have to figure out the tech around that. So they're trying different ways. They might not know how to manage their team, so now they've got all their team all working in different areas, and how do they manage that remote team, and also try and reduce the kind of the isolation and some of the loneliness, and then also on top of it, they're now got, with some people, they've got their families at home, so they've got the distraction, they've got to do look after their kids, and maybe perhaps they're now a home tutor as well as an architect, so they're doing client work. And for some, they don't have client work. So if they had work on site, well, for some, I know here in the UK, there is the debate of whether or not construction workers should also be staying at home. But at the moment, they are on site, and we do have work on site, but a lot of work has reduced, and they're having reduction in client work, and perhaps cancellations, maybe not just postponement, but cancellations. So it's those types of issues that they are now dealing with, which again for everybody is kind of unprecedented in what you do next and how you make money, how you make revenue. and then also how long this is going to go on for, because it's, in some ways it's worse than a recession, because um, it is so, like I said, everybody is at home, everything has come to a standstill. It's everything, it's not just one or two things, industries, it's affecting all industries. So if you specialize in hotel work, for example, how do you now change what you do? So yeah, so that's some, those are some of the issues that people are dealing with. Oh,
Yeah, I think that
and also the other thing is, again, and I think this is with everyone, it's, do you still sell? How do you still sell to people, or how do you market your services, so that when it is over, you are still top of mind, and how you do that with sympathy. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, very accurate. Really run through the situation. I think right now I speak to a lot of experts as well as architects, and I see a lot of those issues indeed quite present.
Mm,
Even today, I had a call with someone who was at home with children, and they've
mm,
been finding it hard to work in this kind of environment to focus. So it's a very valid point, and I also think that the uncertainty of the situation, of really how long it will last for,
mm.
this moment of isolation, and on which level it will actually affect our businesses, is really hard to guess.
Yes.
Because even though countries like China, parts of China have already gone back to business as usual, it seems to be more prominent in Europe, and perhaps because
Mm,
not all countries implemented the social distancing to the
mm,
levels as others. I think that this issue might be going on for much longer than expected. So
mm.
first we were talking 2 weeks, now it might be a month or two.
Yeah,
And I think that that will have a detrimental effect on a lot of businesses, and the way, we maintain our clients,
mm,
deliver to the current clients if we still can,
yes.
but also how do we pivot around and adapt to that change in a
Mm,
way in which we can actually potentially, if that's in threat as well, save our businesses, especially service-based design businesses.
yeah.
So I'm curious about, I know that you worked with some other experts on delivering solutions.
Mm.
I'm curious about finding out a little bit more about the actual suggestions that you have to, how do you define adaptability to change today?
Yeah, obviously, what we're doing now is, what we're going through is a little unique, but I do think some of the principles still apply, even though, some people's main focus is going to be on, it's going to be on revenue, and maybe they're worried and confused and lost. But I do think, sometimes if you're able to, find a way to be able to diversify what you do. So it can be a case of looking at the skill set that you've got, and also the situation that you're in. So we have moved to remote working. So part of the social distancing is we're all moved to remote working. So if, for example, you have a skill set where um, you can develop events, for example. So you can, even though you're an architect, you can still do maybe virtual events, and you can bring together some other architects, perhaps even people who might need a mentor or that type of thing, where you can have virtual events. And you can maybe do it for free for maybe a first event, but maybe continue, you can charge a certain amount to invite people to the events that you do, virtual events that you do. And it can revolve around the skill set that you already have, because architecture is so vast. You can not just talk about, drawing or sketching or something like that. You can talk about maybe the processes that you have, or some of the client management that you have, so that when people, at the end of this, for example, people have a new skill set, or they are improving on their business. So if you already have that skill set where, your client normally says to you, oh, I love the way that you do X, Y, and Z, maybe you can package that up and sell that on to somebody who might have more difficulty. You could develop online courses a bit like yourself, who, you know, you can develop an online course and package that up and sell that on as well. You can also, so what I'm getting is you need to be able to look at your skill set, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with what you've designed your business in. So if you're good at Instagram, for example, if you're good at social media, then you can perhaps develop that side of your business, or branding and marketing. Perhaps you can develop that side of your business, or graphic design, because there is some correlation between, I think, architecture and graphic design and brand design. So it's about looking at your skill set and seeing how can I package up what I do or what I'm good at and my hobbies, and be able to sell that to somebody who needs my help right now. Um, and I think, and sometimes that might take time. So it might not necessarily be an immediate thing. But sometimes it can happen if you've already, if for example, it was something you was thinking about before, and it was just that client work took you away from developing your ideas. You can just kind of rearrange your priorities and perhaps go ahead and develop those ideas that you had. And if you do work in a team, you're not just a sole practitioner, you work with other people. Perhaps you can organize a brainstorming session with your team. Perhaps they've got some ideas that, again, will put to one side because of client work. So I think this is an opportunity in some ways to be able to develop the ideas that you've got, develop the team, develop your the ideas that your team may have of improving your business, or developing a new niche. Um, and that also might be in terms of your clients. So from what I said before, if your niche was hotels and that has come to a close, then maybe you develop kind of the branding side, because perhaps they may need branding or marketing that you can sell to them in that respect, you know, because you've worked with them before, they've seen your design work. I don't think it's such a huge step that they now see that you've got an arm of your business that's now branding or something like that. So don't be afraid to do some brainstorming around what skill set you have, what skill set your team has, and it could be interests and hobbies that you've wanted to develop that you can package up. So I think that's a way that you diversify what you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. And I also think that for some companies and businesses that perhaps are not yet threatened by the continuity of their projects,
Mm.
perhaps it would be just looking into aspects of your own business that you need to develop
Yeah.
and grow. Because, you know, from own experience as well, running a business, there's always this weaker thing that you
Mm.
don't put too much attention into, like the presence of your website, or perhaps how you run your social media, or how you communicate with your clients or not communicate per
Yeah.
se as well, because you've been too busy to respond to emails and
Yeah.
follow up with some relationships. And I think for some it's actually time to take a breath
Mm.
and accept this fact that perhaps your business has slowed down a little bit, but you know, you can develop a stronger arm
Mm.
by focusing on basically some of those aspects like marketing, like your own branding, like the way you communicate with people and get out there. um, and yeah, just keep growing your relationships, because everybody's online right now. And you know, if you have your portfolio put together, you can just try to find new clients also through communicating on LinkedIn and reaching out to people. So I know that you mentioned before uh, aspects of diversifying
Mm.
what you do. So how would you define the sort of issues that can one encounter, you know, as they actually decide to diversify? Let's just look at the road ahead and try to discuss some, you know, roadblocks that perhaps by being ready for them, it will be easier to prepare for them and omit.
Mm. I would say some of the roadblocks are being able to capture those ideas. So if it's not just, like I said, if you work with a team, it's being able to capture those ideas and be able to filter through which ideas to develop and which ideas maybe to combine, or which ideas to kind of leave to one side. So that can be a difficulty for some. For some, it's even the idea you've specialised in one area. It's the idea that you might have to move to another either specialist area or serve a different client. It's kind of the mindset issue of, okay, so I've specialised in this for this amount of years or whatever, and now I have to find another way to serve that client, or perhaps maybe even um, serve a different client. So it's kind of going to be that mindset issue. I think that might be the main thing. It's how how to diversify, what to do. Some people might not know even where to start. How do I start? And so even when you capture those ideas, you're like, okay, I've got all these thousands of ideas. What do I do? What do I do with it now? So it can be almost that brain freeze with, okay, I don't know what to do. So you've got that kind of roadblock, and then also it is being able to if for example your audience sees you a certain way, or as your client sees you a certain way, then how do you change that perception that you also do this? So you're an architect, you've done this for this amount of years. How do you now change their perception that you also do graphic design, for example? How do you change that perception out there that you do have expertise in this? Because it's almost for some people it's almost going to be like starting from scratch. That you've got a new that you've got this new branch of expertise. Um, and then also, in fact, one of the things I didn't talk about I forgot to talk about in diversifying. You can collaborate with other people. So that is also a good way for diversifying. You don't necessarily, you can combine your forces with somebody else. So if you do specialize in hotels, maybe you combine your forces with someone who maybe specializes in, I don't know, bridges. I don't know, but an area that somebody might want at this period of time. So it's finding somebody. A roadblock might be finding somebody um, who you can collaborate with, who you can work with, um, who you get on with, and you can develop a package where you can sell to a potential client. So those are the type of things that might be a roadblock.
Mm. And you mentioned that, one of the things that could be quite a big roadblock is actually not knowing where to start.
Mm.
So where to start? Where should one start?
Yeah, okay. So I mean, I think so, depending on where you are. So I think you start with what you've already got. So I think for most people, they probably would have had an idea already. Maybe that idea was already percolating. Maybe they wrote down notes. And I think that's where you start. You start from the idea that you already had, that you haven't yet had a chance to develop, because I think people do tend to have a business plan, or maybe they've written notes on a napkin or whatever of where they want to improve. Maybe they want to improve their business, they just don't have time, or perhaps like I said, they had an idea about, maybe they wanted to write a book. Maybe they wanted to write a book, and they just didn't have the time, so they just put it to one side. So I think you start with the idea that you had first, and then go on from there. I think sometimes you have to discard the rest of those, just see how feasible that idea is. maybe do some research, maybe speak to people about that idea that you've got. If, for example, it's a book, on if somebody wants to read about that subject that you want to write a book about. But if, for example, it's a process and you wanted to improve your client management, and you've always wanted to do that, you just haven't had the chance because you've been busy, then that's the idea that you focus on.
I also wanted to suggest that for those who work in the sector of, as scholars in education, and also people that are practicing but wanted to develop maybe methodology and book, it's a good time to just do research also and start focusing a little bit more on developing those aspects. It's definitely a time that is comparable to recession, and it's a time of the unknown. It's definitely one of those moments where businesses will be affected and your everyday life will be affected. But the way you go about it and how you find your way into your everyday, and again, reconnect with your priorities, reconnect with things that you wanted to implement perhaps before, and quickly pivot into staying productive and doing things that still fire you up and excite you. And also, it's a good time to learn new things. There is endless universities that are opening up their libraries, online libraries for architects as well, and as well as all other online courses to take, where either you can collaborate with experts, for example, in marketing or brand development, or other experts that help architects develop their businesses, and perhaps take that moment to really just focus on the one part of your business. How can you make it grow, and perhaps also prepare your business for more of that change that might happen again in the future. Now that we're living through it, we're more like, it's easier for us to understand that this can happen again, and to understand the effect really that it can have on our business and how quickly it can change things.
I do also think I probably forgot the one of the ways that I think some people also wanted to change their business was they probably did always want to do remote working, and I do think although I wouldn't like to think that the way because the way of the social distancing, that remote working has become almost poisonous to people, because it's unusual in the way that we're remote working, in that we've got families at home that we can't leave. We don't, well, in the UK at least anyway, we can only leave the house for certain essentials. So, exercising once a day, and, going out for medicine and food. And so it's unusual, this kind of remote working. So it is, I wouldn't like to think that people have now got a negative view of remote working. There is positive aspects to it. And there is, I know it's not for everybody, but I do think it is an opportunity for businesses to look at the way that they work, with not just their permanent employees, but also their freelancers. So being able to, I mean, some businesses do it already, but being able to employ people who may not necessarily be in your local area, um, and having the talent to, having the talent everywhere, anywhere in the world. So there is that aspect, and I do think people, employers, should just take that opportunity to look at the way that they maybe do implement flexi working rather than, I suppose, remote working, so that when you do get back to the office, perhaps you look at the policies and give people the option of remote working, maybe work, once a week from home or something like that. Because I do know remote working isn't for everybody, and there's a lot of people struggling with remote working because it's been enforced. So that was probably the last thing, because I do help people with those types of processes in implementing remote working. So that was probably the other thing that I would like to say, that it's not It's not supposed to be negative.
Yeah, exactly.
um,
No, definitely. In fact, I actually covered an article about this as well in my Medium at Sara Kolata blog, where
yeah,
I'm talking about those subjects of basically adaptability to remote work and how can you change the setting of your firm
yeah,
into basically adapting for a situation like this if it ever happened in the
yeah,
future. Also thinking about how you can diversify your team into people that are actually in-house workers and some that perhaps you work on an outsourced basis
yeah,
that are full-time remote workers where basically they can work for you in the respect of just giving their time maybe once or twice a week and just completing certain
yeah,
tasks that are part of the team. So there's definitely a difference between the people that are in-house and remote workers, but by diversifying your team and opening up to these opportunities, you can also allow for more flexibility for change and not be in a desperate situation of having your full-time team not adapted
yeah,
and ever having to go through that shock per se again.
yeah,
So it's very, I think it's a very good idea to implement those strategies from now on into your business.
yeah.
Um,
And that would also,
anyway,
I also think I do think also now is a good time for employers to look at that outsourcing as well. So, look at how you set up your team and how you set up your projects, and perhaps maybe now's the opportunity just to look at, because it is difficult when you're in it to be able to find, for example, if you really want to find somebody that's good at what they do, you don't want to be waiting until you need them before you start looking. So perhaps start looking now and build up a team, a supplier list, of the people that you might need, that you could call on when your projects um, are when your projects are on the go, when they start up again. You don't want to start looking for those freelancers. Just, you can use this opportunity now. There's plenty of people out there now. You can reach out to them and just speak to them. Is this what you do? Is this how you can help? How do how can you help? When I do have my projects up and running. So I think this is also a good opportunity to do that, and find out how they work, what their fees are and everything, and just put it in a spreadsheet or something so you have it for when you're ready to go.
yeah, definitely. Well, I just think that it's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you, Maria. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and the experience, and also kind of representing a voice from your clients and people that you work with every day, of being, just giving us a little bit of a rundown through the main issues. I believe that a lot of the listeners that will tune in with us will actually feel common subjects, and perhaps there's been a lot of help and advice,
Mm,
and I really encourage for everybody to take that time to reflect and pivot, and there's a
mm,
lot of opportunities for change. So thank you very much for being my guest on that
thank
talk,
you for inviting me.
and I hope that we can do it again sometime.
Of course, of course. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Recorded.
Thank you. Take care, Maria. Thanks.
Bye.